Good. So, welcome to part two of the interview with John. If you haven't watched part one, you will probably want to check that out first because this first question, which I find to be very interesting, is sort of playing off something he mentioned earlier, police work. Why don't you tell me a little bit about your experience with supporting others, investigators, police, whatever it might have been? Tell me a little bit about what that was like for you, and if you can, you mentioned the emotional piece and how it doesn't always end up flowing the way you'd like it to, and maybe bring that in as well.
Great. I'll give three quickly. One
Yeah.
was a doctor from in New York that had been robbed in his office, and they basically beat him up and took drugs that were in his office. And he was very concerned. He had a small little office. He was concerned that they would have come back. He really was. So through a certain psychical research institute in New York, he came to me and asked about it. So I actually went into a trance. We really didn't get into that in the first one. That's a deeper level Edgar Casey type stuff that I've done on occasion. And that's the deepest level that I go to. And what I saw was, I said, I described the three men that they had, because they had masks on. I drew pictures of them. I described them. I said where they lived and worked. And I said that if you do not take this information, I said, take it to the police captain that's working on it. I said, if you do not go to the Bronx where they had their social club, if you don't act on this information in 2 weeks, there will be a police officer will be by an elevated train. He'll pull a car over by a paint store or something like that, and he'll be shot. And so 2 weeks to the day. And I said, oh, there's a Browns. And then they said, if you don't, they'll go over the Verrazano Bridge on a Brown 68 Electra, and I gave the numbers.
Wow.
Very, very, very specific sets of things. So basically what happens is they bring this tape to the police, and the captain goes, come on, give me a break, right? Guess what happens 2 weeks to the day? A police officer in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, goes into a hardware store, does a double park. Hey guys, and the cop comes in. They didn't know what it was about, and they shot and killed the poor police officer. They get in their Brown 68 Electra. It was the last digit was a 9, not an 8, but all the letters and the first three were correct. And they went over the Verrazano Bridge, eventually to the Bronx. And when they caught them in the Bronx, the pictures that I drew were almost identical.
You
That was not a happy thing.
right?
It wasn't happy.
Yeah.
About a year later, there was a very famous case in New York of Eaton Pates, a boy that was kidnapped from Soho. And they came to me. And this time I went into a trance in the boy's bed. And I saw what happened. It was so horrific. I became the boy. I saw where he was held. I saw that what had happened was, with all the attention, that the person panicked that was kidnapping him. And I saw this bat come on his face, and I felt the bat hitting my own face. It was one of the worst experiences of my life.
Sure.
And I saw them take the body and dump it in the river, and I had to tell the people that were, I said, you're never going to find the people, but it's this this bodega guy here. Years later, that's the one that emerged. But that was, again, emotional
Yeah.
and non-satisfying. So that's what I realized is, the emotional aspect. And when 9/11 came, what happened was I was working the financial business. At 2 in the morning, I woke up with a pain in my stomach like I've never had. I was totally sick. I called my secretary. I said, something's so off. I'm so sick. And basically some part of me knew what was going on
Hmm.
was going to happen in a short period of time. And then sure enough, it happened. So for me, the emotional piece is both what draws us into being, what interests us, but it's our friend because, it really helps motivate us. But it's also, we have to learn to be able to separate off from that to make it meaningful.
So, John, how do you do that? I mean, I understand what you've been saying in regards to the separating off, and over the years of your career, you've gotten increasingly better at that. But I'm sure there are times, whether it's an emotional conversation, and you obviously care about these people you work with. Let's say that happens. Let's say that you have a good reading, but it's an emotional. You can not only see from talking to the person, but feel what they're going through. What do you do later that day to make sure that you are okay, and that you don't take on too much of their stuff, and that you can get up the next day and not be back, held down by the emotional stress of other people? What's that like?
Those are two great questions.
Hmm.
And they bring up when somebody is doing intuitive work themselves or going to an intuitive reader, they should always ground themselves. That's the first thing. If you're ever going to go to a reader, ground yourself in whatever modality this prayer, a meditation, surround yourself with light, because you never know what kind of stuff that the person is picking up. So you first of all, as somebody that's a client, should go in there grounded. From the other side of the desk, what I do is just that. I get grounded. I meditate beforehand. I meditate afterwards. I ask for release. And I've learned over the years to recognize that if something's hitting it emotionally from in that reading, there's something that I need to learn. Because this isn't just about helping people. I'm in the world to grow too. So I learned, it's like, gee, that stuff really hit me there. And I said, gee, let me explore that. And then finally, the third piece of it for me is simply that I'm really, in that way, a channel. It isn't my information. I'm not God. I'm not Jesus. I'm not Buddha. I'm just there to provide something for people and to not take it personally because, frankly, that's just a recipe for failure.
Yeah, no, it's true. If there was one tip or one strategy that you would give somebody who was interested in developing their intuition, who maybe have had a couple interesting experiences and really wanted to develop their sixth sense and begin to use it to support their lives and things, what would you say to them? Where should they start?
Well, that's very good. There are a couple of ways to do it. One is find a good teacher or a good teaching. Really, both of them. Really get rooted in whatever spiritual tradition that you may have, and find out. Find out what's meaningful to you on a spiritual aspect, on a personal growth aspect. Always align this with your growth. That's one. The other one is finding a good teacher. There are a tremendous amount of good books on intuition. There are classes almost everywhere, either online or at some places that you can go to. Find a good teacher, a trusted teacher in this. It's very hard and very rare that one can do it alone. I was fortunate and unfortunate, perhaps. I've actually had all my training not in body, not here, but I would certainly recommend that you still have a good teacher.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I mean, I think that it's interesting what you just said, and I may ask you to expand on that, but yeah, I mean, a lot of people like yourself, at least that I've worked with, and I've been lucky enough to meet a handful of just really wonderful spiritual people along my spiritual journey. It seems like, and this is sort of a general statement, of course, but it seems like because there's so many people right now waking up to the spiritual side of things, the esoteric side of things, that it is a little bit different. What you just said was interesting in regards to, the way you learned, the way it sort of just began for you. I have other people who have said similar things. They maybe didn't go to an intuitive class when they were 14 years old or something. Mm-hmm. So now with all these people that are waking up to it, there is a lot more, like you said, classes, teachers, books, and things where you can actually go learn this stuff.
You bring up a really interesting point. It's an opportunity. I never thought about it. It's a great question because it's an opportunity because there's so much more. But obviously there's an awful lot of bad stuff out there, or not bad. Let's just say incomplete stuff, or a lot of people with a lot of issues. You go online, oh my God, there's on any one topic, there's an awful lot of misinformation. Mm-hmm. So measure it against the truth of your experience. Know them by their fruits. So basically, the idea is if you're getting good information or getting good things, you're going to feel better, you're going to be healthier, it's going to be really right, and it's going to be working. If it's not working, then that's telling you something too. So really listen. I also think keeping a journal is a really pretty good idea, is to write it down, because like an all good magic, as it were, write it down, get it out of the head, write it down, look at it, and then see how it feels.
Good, thank you. Do you enjoy getting calls and working with people? And what about working with people, if the answer is yes, is it that you enjoy most?
Well, I enjoy the biggest satisfaction that I get was when somebody gets it themselves. Mm-hmm. The biggest challenge I had early on was I was actually pretty good at the eagle on, the story I said in the first 15 minutes about the eagle on the desk and telling details about what would happen. Really, wow, that's really cool. There's a disadvantage of that. It doesn't necessarily have meaning, and people get seduced by that, and then they get to look to me to provide them with their answers. The biggest joy I ever had was people finding their own way to truth, to intuition, to the psychic realm themselves. And in this case, when I'm giving a good session is, you can see the light go off. That gives a context that they hadn't thought about before. It gives them more opportunities to handle challenges that they thought were maybe insurmountable. And it gives them a chance to explore new things that they hadn't necessarily looked at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's what I found working with you is, again, not only did the conversation begin with where I thought I was at and where I was at. But yeah, the ability to expand and look at the deeper levels is just huge, and to understand that there might be things playing out in our lives at the so-called surface level, but everything going on is typically connected to something much deeper.
Yeah, one of the ones I had recently was an old friend of mine, a girlfriend of mine, way back, long, long time ago out of school, and she was into this stuff and I wasn't.
Mm,
Well, at that time, she was awake in
interesting.
her early 20s, and I connected up with her and her husband years later, long, as adults, really.
Hmm.
And she became ill last year in 2013.
Mm.
She called me from out of the country where she was in Central America, and she had dengue fever. Well, I was able to connect up with angels, and a great angel came, and within a day, her dengue fever, it was gone.
Wow.
And I didn't do the work. I did ask. I asked from the deepest place that I know. But the thing is, she didn't ask a month later when she was going in for an operation. I knew she was sick. I tried to reach her, and the challenge was she didn't ask,
Hmm.
and she didn't make it through the operation at
Yeah.
a relatively young age. So that's
Right.
the challenge, is when you think, I said, I felt so badly. I still feel badly because I couldn't make a difference. And then I realized what's wrong with that is
Yeah.
I never made a difference. Love made a difference.
Hmm.
God made a difference. And when I learned to recognize it's not me, it's
Yeah.
better.
Well, this is not only important, but it's touching, of course. But it's this understanding that people watching this and listening to this, really, if you haven't bought into this fact that it's okay to, from your heart, ask for support and pray for others as well. That whether you believe in angels or God or Allah or the unified field, whatever you call it, that it's okay to speak to this divine source from your heart and ask for help. To me, that's just such an important concept. And I'll just speak about myself for a moment. Growing up in also in a Catholic family where this sort of idea wasn't shared as openly. It was you weren't told this, and so it was very hard for me when I was in my mid 20s, when I began my spiritual life, to be able to switch over and say, wait a second, it's okay for me to kind of think about where I would like my life to go, and ask for help and support in getting there. It's like I felt guilty.
Right?
So I love these types of conversations because, in my opinion, in my visual, I just feel that there's teams and teams of angels and spirit guides and whatnot, whatever you want to call them, that are here and just lined up, ready to help. And it's really up to us to open up and ask from our heart, like you said.
Well, one thing both the first session that we did and even now, you're
Hmm.
talking about early 2014. You look at the world. I mean, it's always going hell to a handbasket in some way, but there is a sense something is shifting and moving to some, not end point, but some crisis point.
Yeah.
I think now more than ever, it's really important to actually open up to that highest level, not just even angels, even, no offense, I'm Christian, Jesus,
Hmm.
but to God itself, and say, I want to reestablish that
Yeah.
connection with God. I'm going to ask God itself. That's what Jesus did. That's what the teach is like. He just connected with God itself. And I think that's really important time to start to do that. Not necessarily in a religious way, but in whatever your
Hmm.
tradition is, ask God for help at the highest possible level. And that is what will be answered. And I think we're going to start to see more and more people talking about this year, to make a quote unquote prediction. And we're
Hmm.
going to start to see more talk about this again.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad this topic came up again, and I think you sort of reviewed there's something you said earlier, and I want to repeat it because, again, I just find this to be so important. Um, but start with where you're at in this idea of developing a connection with the divine source, God, whatever it is that your religion or your belief system calls it. Start with where you're at, and begin to develop that relationship just like it's a really, really close friend, and be in communication with this divine source about your life. And of course, always praying for others and giving gratitude and savoring when you can, but at the same time, not being afraid to say, hey, I need you to show up and help me in these situations. But I love that it's about, you don't have to go grab a book quite yet. Maybe just start by taking the next week or so. What is your connection currently right now? And starting there as your base and then growing from there.
Well,
So,
I'm going to just allude to one aspect,
mhm.
an image that might be helpful to people. There are three things that we are. We're a raindrop. We become part of a river or a stream, and we end up in the ocean, and then we get recycled back. And a lot of times people are just a raindrop. They just feel themselves alone. They don't really have any identity. But after a while, you start to say, I'm part of something. A spiritual group, a tradition, whatever. You align with others and stuff. And well, that's kind of cool. It's a great identification. Jesus is my river. Moses is my river, whatever. But then you ultimately come down the river. All rivers come down to the ocean, and that's where we all come. We all have it. But as we're starting to find out in science, that book, Matsura Emoto, about the
water?
Yeah, the water. Here, it's a great book. The Message from Water. Here.
Yes.
It's a great book.
Great book.
It's a great book. Is like this water has intelligence. It has consciousness. It connects to love. It responds to love. So we're not just that raindrop, but we're a raindrop that is connected with all of the raindrops and all of the oceans, and that connection is love. And if we really remember that and act from that, wow, we can change the shape of our crystals.
Oh, it's just absolutely beautiful. Well, on that note, I think we'll bring the interview to the end, and just what a great way to finish with this great metaphor and reminder that really, when it comes down to it, this is about developing ourselves to love at great capacity, and that's it's the heart and love and connection that we're all here to really learn to do. John, is there anything else that you'd like to add or say that you're being guided to tell everyone or anyone, and let me know if so?
The one thing I gather from Spirit that to share is ask. Mm-hmm. Ask, and then ask again. From a practical level, from the human side of this, it's been said in spirit traditions, if you have something that you want that's truly valuable, ask 3 times, genuinely in your heart, and then it'll be answered. That way you have a chance to test yourself. That is it truly something that is from your heart? But from the spirit side, the spirit side of things is so desirous, if that's the right word, to help out. Ask.
Beautiful. Well, thank you very much for your time today. I appreciate it. And as I mentioned, I look forward to talking with you one-on-one personally again soon. And I enjoyed speaking with you, and have a great rest of your day.
Great. Thanks, Dave. It's been a really great pleasure and an honor to be on your show. Thank you.